I was never allowed to be just Julie in my whole life, just to be me. From both a parental point of view, I was brought up in a domestic violence, to then my first husband, stayed with him for 20 years, and then out of the frying pan into the fire. And it was just, I was always Julie for somebody else, had to conform to their way of thinking, to their way of speaking, conform to what they wanted me to dress, how to act.
So the domestic abuse strategy for Glasgow was born out of quite a thorough reflection and a deep dive, which coincided with the earlier stages of the public health pandemic. And what we really quite quickly acknowledged was that whilst families were coming together, there was also a requirement to sharpen our focus around domestic abuse.
The fact it's getting looked at, the fact that it's been recognised, the fact that there's this much care and attention being put into it, it's fantastic. I'm very excited about it and hope to see a real positive outcome that can support survivors of domestic abuse out there.
In order to harness all of our experience and take full advantage of all of that, there was a requirement for a Glasgow HSCP strategic plan that would include a number of key priority areas, as well as some 4 aims that are detailed within the strategy itself.
What we need to do if we're going to respond robustly to domestic abuse is make sure that non-specialist domestic abuse services that are specialists in their own right have a really good understanding of what that looks like, to identify clients and customers within their environment that might be experiencing it, ask the question if relevant, and be able to respond to disclosure and use those multi-agency processes that we have, such as MANAC, to manage that.
At any given point, domestic abuse accounts for the best part of about 45% of all child protection registration. It takes into account about 10% of all presentations of homelessness. It accounts for about 25% of all adult protection referrals. So to take a deep dive into this, there has to be an acknowledgement that this is an area of work that requires a strategic oversight and a development, given that it cuts across so many different care groups all at once.
I think there's a fear around, if someone discloses something to you, then what are you going to do with that information? So I think with the strategy, it sounds really positive in the sense that if we're going to put in more training for staff from different agencies so that they feel confident with routine inquiries, and then hopefully, having that toolkit, that knowing where to refer someone on to, because at the moment, obviously people care, but there's a fear about having information given to you and then not knowing what to do with that information. It feels like from the strategy that hopefully they're trying to make it easier for staff from all agencies to be more supportive, which is amazing.
The promotion of the Safe and Together training, I think, is going to be really important in terms of changing the culture in social work as a whole.
So we know that it can take a long time to get to the point where you're going to call the police. So anything that can be done to intervene and provide safety to victims earlier on is absolutely part of what we should be doing.
So justice services, children and family services, adults, older people services, homelessness, our third sector partners, our key stakeholders, which obviously included police and education, are all part of this working arrangement. But central to it and straight through the middle of it is the lived and living experience, and that's an area that we're particularly proud of in terms of how we've engaged with that.
We wanted to do some service user engagement. We wanted to engage with people who had lived experience, but rather than us engaging directly with them, which we thought could be intimidating, they might not want to engage with management or planners in the HSCP. We worked with our partners who had service users, who worked with mainly women but also men on a day-to-day basis.
I think what is actually valuable is what we're doing just now. Just someone's talking, but you're listening and you're genuinely listening to them. It's not that we're just meeting at a certain time and a certain day and I'll meet you again tomorrow. We have to be able to say, this is your life, and we're here for you, and we are literally here 24/7, but I know every service can't obviously offer that, but we are here and we really want to help this time. And if you want to talk about it today but you don't want to talk about it whenever, it's got to be at your pace.
To be able to come into the Cara Centre with all these wonderful staff, they allowed me to be me. And when I came in, I wouldn't say boo to a goose, I wouldn't talk to anybody, I was so shy. I thought if I said the wrong thing, you still have that in your mind that you're going to get hit or you're going to get verbal abuse. To be able to just speak and just say what you want to say, it was a breath of fresh air. It was honestly a breath of fresh air. It was the first time in my whole life, 55 years, I was able to sigh, take a deep breath, because I felt for 55 years I'd held it in. You hold your breath. And it was the first time in my life I was able to lower my shoulders and relax and just be me.
But very often, conversations don't necessarily come out when there's a direct question. It can be built up through other ways. So for example, we've got the Citizens Advice and Citizens Theatre as well. We've got different groups that come in, but the theatre group in particular has been a fantastic vessel, because that's really just about, you know, just exploring what are you good at. And we talk about strength-based assessments, and service users, they've got fantastic abilities, and it's only through developing self-worth and confidence that you can actually really begin to get to know somebody and offer that kind of help.
It's important that people feel positive, that maybe they astonish themselves having reignited their creativity, and that's very exciting. Or create and remain something that they'd never considered before, and feel they can stand a bit taller and feel a sense of pride and feel a sense of purpose, that they've achieved something when perhaps all around you you feel you haven't achieved things. Once you've got purpose, you've got meaning, and when life's got meaning, these are the building blocks and the tools you need to leave a supported centre and think about how you operate as an upstanding citizen in the community again.
Because it's never just as simple as, well, if you do this or if you do that. And obviously our goal, we're emergency homelessness at the end of the day, so our goal is to move people out into more suitable accommodation, but handing a set of keys to somebody is not just the answer. They need that support mechanism in place.
Well, it wasn't seeking help or accepting help, it was more just I was hiding everything. I didn't want anybody to know, and I thought I was doing the right thing at the time, you know, because there was a lot of threats going about and whatever, and I thought, I just want this to go away. You know, I hadn't told my parents or any of my family at all. I think I was just worrying that my mum and dad are quite old school, and that I was scared that they would blame me, you know, for bringing something like that into my life.
I think it's the culture and the, I suppose, understanding in domestic abuse, and not just from the men, but from people. I think for men within Glasgow, there is a lot of minimisation.
We're not doing enough for victims, you know, we need to be doing more. You know, this is a huge problem, we need to be doing more. You can't tackle the problem in any way properly unless you're engaging the men and challenging them to change their behaviour.
It's a lot of that sort of language of mine was just verbal abuse, mine was just text messages. And it's that sort of kind of lack of understanding of the harm that can cause.
What I did to my daughter, what I did to my ex-partner, what I did to my ex-step-boy made me own up to that massively. I pleaded guilty straight away. I was just no point of dragging my daughter through all of that to make it even more worse for her. It was just a case of going, I did what I did wrong, it was me, it was all my doing. I was the rag, I went crazy, and I will not drag my way through courts. She's already been through enough.
Taking a kind of holistic approach to working with men who are convicted of domestic abuse, basically cognitive behavioural therapy, looking at thoughts, attitudes, trying to develop insight and awareness, getting them thinking about the offence, but also how to, a lot of them are dealing with things like shame and guilt and trying to work through a lot of the difficult emotions.
As assessing the strategy, you know, work with these men has to be trauma informed as well, because unfortunately a lot of these men have had very, very difficult experiences, often in childhood. It's that fine line again, you know, acknowledging these really horrendous experiences, really difficult experiences, but you're saying you're still accountable for how you behave now.
Well, I went through obviously stuff with childhood, and the older I got, the more it got on top of me. I started using drugs to block out that. I also had a cocaine habit, drink cocaine. That was my way of numbing things, instead of me trying to cover it up, because all you're doing is papering over cracks, and once you sober up, the paper falls back off. It's something like this should be a part of schools, high schools, along with your sex education, because we can be living in a society that kids are seeing this at home. Now, if we can maybe start at high school, maybe even primary school, like P6 or 7, and start off there and let them know that this is not acceptable behaviour, maybe we can save people from going down this direction in life.
How to have those boundaries, no, that's not acceptable. If you as a boyfriend thinks that it's acceptable to tell me what to wear, who I can talk to, take the passwords off my phone, that's not what a boyfriend does that loves you. That's a boyfriend who's controlling. So it's about knowing the difference between love and control, and there's a lot of education needs to be shared about that.
I've lost everything. I did lose everything, but I've got my self-respect back now. I've got my self-respect. I've got confidence, self-belief, and I can speak up for myself, and I can talk up for others.
It can happen to anybody, and never to judge someone who is a victim of domestic abuse, because you just don't know when it can happen to you. You do not know what goes on behind closed doors.
Bullying's an awful thing. Controlling is an awful thing, but it comes in so many shapes and forms. It's not just a punch, and it's not just a black eye. It's verbal. Words stick. But I'm allowed to be me now. I'm allowed to be Julie. And I was never allowed to be like that before. Ever. Ever. You feel different. You just feel lighter. The burden has lifted. And I don't have to question myself anymore. That I was in the wrong, because I wasn't wrong. I've got things wrong in the past. But the things that have happened to me throughout my life, that have been horrific, horrible, painful, are not my fault.